I've been working in emergency radiology since the early 2000s. And let me tell you, it's not all just x-rays and broken bones. Back then, we were still using daylight processors for most of our film developing, since digital radiography wasn't mainstream yet. But sometimes you'd still need to use the darkroom to develop radiographs. If you've never been in a hospital darkroom, let me paint you a picture. These places are cramped, hot, and the chemical smell is so strong it makes your head spin. There's barely any light except for this intense red safe light in the corner so we can actually see what we're doing. The countertops were clean because we needed them to be, but the rest of the room, total disaster, especially in the emergency room darkroom. Working in emergency radiology means you're constantly under pressure. When trauma comes in, every second counts. The radiographs I'm developing could literally be the difference between life and death, showing doctors whether someone's bleeding internally or if their spine is intact. Now here's where things get interesting. Way too many times I'd rotate through that little revolving door from the trauma hall to the dark room and find myself inches away from hospital staff getting intimate in there. I should mention that these revolving doors don't lock at all. There's zero privacy. When you're carrying time-sensitive films from a trauma case, the last thing you want to see is your co-workers hooking up. Every time it happened, I'd unleash a masterclass in profanity while they scrambled to gather themselves and bolt. Hospital staff doing inappropriate things with each other happens more than you'd think, but I had work to do. No time for that nonsense. There was this one emergency room nurse who was a repeat offender. I caught her 3 separate times. After the third interruption, she had the audacity to go to my supervisor and complain that I purposefully interrupted a private conversation. My supervisor laughed her right out of the office, since this nurse had absolutely no reason or authorization to be in the dark room in the first place. But from that point on, I was determined to catch her properly. It took almost a year, but when I finally did, it was glorious. The last time I caught her in my dark room, I had a different approach. Instead of just yelling, I quickly grabbed her scrub pants off the floor, turned around and went back out through the revolving door. I folded the pants neatly, making sure the ID badge clipped to the waistband was visible with her smiling face and name clearly showing. I walked straight to the emergency room nursing supervisor, handed over the pants, and explained in a professional tone that the nurse identified on the badge was currently in the dark room and had requested her pants be brought to her. The nursing supervisor gave me a bewildered look for a moment, as if I had suddenly grown another head. But then understanding dawned on her face. She immediately turned and hurried down the hallway toward the dark room with purpose in her step. I never saw that nurse again after that night. Not once. And the married respiratory therapist she was with that time? His career took quite the hit too. I wish I could have stayed to watch what happened next, but I had to rush to the main department darkroom to develop my urgent film. Apparently it was brutal. Later I heard that the supervisor had burst into the dark room and caught them in the act under that red safe light. The supervisor had loudly demanded to know what they thought they were doing, reminding them sharply that this was a medical facility, not some cheap motel. The nurse had tried to stammer out an explanation, but the supervisor cut her off before she could finish, pointing out that there was a trauma case at that very moment needing radiographs. She ordered them to get dressed immediately. The respiratory therapist had pathetically begged the supervisor not to tell his wife about the incident. The supervisor had coldly reminded him that he should have considered his wife before deciding to use hospital facilities for his affair, and then ordered both of them to report to her office as soon as they were decent. Word spread that the nurse had tried to cover herself with a borrowed lab coat, while everyone in the emergency room pretended not to stare. But they all saw. They all knew what had happened. And I never caught anyone in my dark room again until I transferred hospitals. Word got around fast that the emergency radiology darkroom was no longer a romantic hotspot. It was a warm summer day in the park, and I sat on a bench waiting for my mom to bring me a hot dog. My crutches were giving me trouble, making the day a bit harder, but I tried to stay positive. I've been using them ever since I broke my leg playing soccer 2 weeks ago. The whole thing happened during the championship game. I was the team striker, and we were tied 2-2 in the final minutes. I went for a slide tackle to get the ball, but the other player accidentally stepped on my leg while I was down. I heard a crack, felt intense pain, and just like that, my soccer season was over. The doctor said I'd need the crutches for at least 6 more weeks. So there I was, just sitting in the park, enjoying the sun on my face and watching people walk by. My leg was throbbing a bit more than usual that day, probably because I'd been moving around too much at physical therapy earlier. My mom had suggested we get some fresh air and have lunch at the park to cheer me up after my frustrating therapy session. I was lost in my own thoughts when suddenly I heard someone's voice behind me. A woman mockingly commented on how I was using crutches like a baby. I turned around and saw this middle-aged woman standing there with a smirk on her face. She had blonde hair with dark roots showing and was wearing shabby clothes that looked like they hadn't been washed in days. I had never seen her before, and I couldn't understand why she was being so mean to me. I tried to ignore her and looked away, but she wouldn't stop. She continued to taunt me, asking what was wrong and if I couldn't walk without the crutches, calling me pathetic. I could feel my face turning red with embarrassment. I'm only 15 and I didn't know how to handle an adult speaking to me this way. I just wanted her to go away. I explained to her that I broke my leg playing soccer and needed the crutches to walk. She then complained that I was taking up too much space on the bench and demanded that I move over. I scooted over as much as I could, even though there was plenty of room on the bench. I just wanted her to leave me alone. But then things got even weirder. She accused me of hitting her son with my crutches earlier and pretending not to know what she was talking about. I told her that I hadn't left the bench since my mom went to get food and had no idea what she was referring to. She called me a liar, claiming she saw me and declared she was taking my crutches to teach me a lesson. Before I could react, she reached out and grabbed my crutches that were leaning against the bench next to me. I tried to hold on to them, but she yanked them away. I pleaded with her to give them back, explaining that I couldn't walk without them. She cruelly suggested that I should have thought about that before hitting her precious boy, and called me a cripple. She started walking away with my crutches, calling me names that I don't even want to repeat. I was stranded on the bench, unable to go after her. I felt completely helpless and tears started welling up in my eyes. I'd never felt so humiliated in my life. Just then, my mom returned with our food. She immediately saw what was happening, me sitting on the bench looking devastated, and some strange woman walking away with my crutches. My mom called out to the woman, telling her to stop harassing me and to return my crutches. The woman turned around, still holding my crutches. She defiantly told my mom that she would do whatever she wanted, claiming that I had hit her son with the crutches and she was teaching me a lesson. My mom told her that I had been sitting there the entire time she was getting food and demanded that she give the crutches back immediately. My mom tried to take my crutches from her, but the woman wouldn't give them back. Instead, she shoved my mom hard, making her stumble and fall to the ground. My mom quickly got back up, her face flushed with anger. She reached into her purse and pulled out a can of pepper spray that she always carried for protection. She warned the woman to leave us alone or she would use the spray. The woman just laughed. She taunted my mom, asking if she was really going to spray her and saying she was just giving me what I deserved. She tried to walk away with my crutches, but my mom didn't hesitate. She sprayed the woman right in the face. The woman immediately dropped my crutches and fell to her knees, screaming and clawing at her eyes. The woman cried out in pain, yelling that my mom had sprayed her and calling for help, claiming she was being attacked. People in the park started gathering around us, and a security guard came running over. He separated my mom and the screaming woman, who was now rolling on the ground dramatically. The woman demanded they call the police, insisting that my mom had attacked her for no reason and should be arrested. My mom explained what happened. She told the security guard that the woman had stolen my crutches and pushed her when she tried to get them back, and that she had used pepper spray in self-defense. The security guard called the police while another park employee helped me get my crutches back. The woman kept screaming and crying, acting like she was the victim. When the police arrived, the woman told them a completely different story, claiming my mom had randomly attacked her. Thankfully, the park had security cameras. The police officer said They would review the footage to see what actually happened. While we waited, the woman kept crying and rubbing her eyes. My mom sat next to me on the bench, her arm around my shoulders. She asked if I was okay and if the woman had hurt me. I assured her I was fine, just embarrassed. She comforted me, saying I had done nothing wrong. About 20 minutes later, the police officer returned. He looked at the woman sternly and told her that they had reviewed the security footage. He said it clearly showed her taking my crutches and assaulting my mother when she tried to get them back. The woman denied it, claiming we were all lying. The officer told her that the footage didn't lie and told her she was under arrest for assault and theft. The officer handcuffed the woman while she screamed and protested. When they led her to the police car, she kept looking back at us, her mascara running down her face from the pepper spray and tears. She shouted that this wasn't over and threatened to sue all of us. After giving our statements, my mom and I were finally allowed to go home. Our hot dogs were cold by then, so we stopped for ice cream instead. As we sat in the car eating our ice cream, I looked over at my mom. I thanked her for standing up for me and told her it was pretty cool how she pepper sprayed the woman. My mom laughed and said she hoped she never had to do that again, but added that nobody messes with her kid. It's been 6 months since that day at the park. I'm off the crutches now and back to playing soccer, though I'm a bit more careful with my sliding tackles. For context, I worked for a state agency that had me driving all over the place every day. It was a unique arrangement. My contract went through a regional agency, but I worked directly for the state. This meant the regional agency director just handled my paychecks and expenses, nothing else. Everything was great for the first year. The regional director understood the arrangement and stayed in his lane. Then he retired, and they promoted the deputy director to replace him. This guy had a reputation as a micromanager who needed to control everything, and he definitely lived up to it. The problem started almost immediately. The new director started trying to give me orders, which wasn't how our setup worked. I told him that's not how things worked according to the contract. You'd think I had slapped him across the face. His whole demeanor changed, and I could tell he was furious that someone in his building wouldn't follow his commands. What made it worse for him was that I was doing an excellent job and the state was really happy with my work, so there was no chance of renegotiating my contract to give him more control. My job had me coming and going throughout the day, and every time I passed this guy in the hallway, he'd glare at me like I had personally insulted his family. During meetings, he'd watch me closely when I took the floor to explain what was happening in the field. This was crucial information everyone needed, so he couldn't shut me down, but I could practically see the steam coming out of his ears. Looking back now, I can laugh about how much I unintentionally bothered this dude just by existing and doing my job. But at the time, I could tell he was searching for any angle to gain leverage over me. Eventually, he realized he had to sign off on my expense reports. That's when he thought he found his opportunity. One afternoon, he appeared in my doorway with a smug look on his face. He told me to come with him in a tone that suggested he had finally caught me doing something wrong. I was surprised but thought, what the heck? Let's see what this is about. He led me to his office and told me to sit down. I noticed he deliberately left his door wide open so everyone nearby could hear our conversation. He had my expense reports from the past month spread across his desk like he was some detective who had cracked a major case. He began questioning me loudly about my travel routes, suggesting that the mileage I reported between various locations was excessive. His tone and volume made it clear to everyone in earshot that he was accusing me of padding my mileage, basically calling me a thief. Something in me snapped. I shouted back, asking if he was calling me a liar. My outburst caught him off guard. Honestly, it surprised me too. I'm not usually one to lose my cool, but the suggestion that I would steal was too much. I told him to wait right there while I got something from my car. I stormed out to my Jeep and grabbed my gazetteer. This was years before Google Maps existed. By the time I stomped back to his office, everyone in the vicinity was watching. I slapped the map book down on his desk and flipped it open. I explained how I used back roads to save time, showing him specific routes that cut significant time off the drive compared to main highways. I pointed out connections that avoided traffic lights in town and other shortcuts I discovered over time. He insisted that wasn't appropriate and that I should be taking the direct routes which he claimed would be faster anyway. I disagreed, explaining that I had driven both ways multiple times and knew from experience that the back roads were faster. When he continued to disapprove, I was completely done with his nonsense. I told him to take it up with my actual supervisor if he had a problem with it. His face twitched at the mention of my real boss, a state official he would never dare challenge. We left it at that, and if I remember correctly, we didn't speak directly to each other again. But the story doesn't end there. A few weeks later, there was an important meeting at a location on the seacoast, about an hour away. Both the regional director and I needed to be there. By coincidence, we ended up leaving the office at the exact same time. He was traveling with a co-worker I got along with. The regional director pulled out of the parking lot ahead of me, and I followed them for about 10 minutes on the main road. Once I reached my usual turnoff, I hit the back roads that, by this point, I knew like the back of my hand. All those shortcuts and time savers he had criticized. When they finally arrived at the meeting location, I was already there, had my materials set up, and was chatting with some of the other attendees. I saw the look of confusion on their faces when they walked in. I casually approached his co-worker and asked if they had stopped for gas or something along the way. The co-worker replied that no, they had come straight through, and asked how long I had been there. I smiled, looked directly at the regional director, and told him I'd been there for 15 minutes already. His co-worker burst out laughing, immediately understanding what had happened. The regional director turned red and quickly walked away to find a seat. After that meeting, his criticisms of my expense reports mysteriously stopped. I guess sometimes it's all about just doing exactly what you said you would do and proving yourself right. About 7 years ago, I was looking for an affordable place after my divorce. My ex got the house, and I got the debt, so I needed something within my budget. I found a decent mobile home for sale in a park with $300 monthly pad rent. I bought the home and paid the entire year's pad rent up front. The first year went smoothly. I fixed up the place and planted some flowers. When renewal time came, management increased the rent to $305. A $5 increase seemed reasonable, so I paid for the entire year again. The same happened the following year. Another $5 increase to $310. I wasn't thrilled, but inflation happens. I paid the full year upfront as usual. Just before my fourth year, I received the renewal notice with a $10 increase to $320. I wondered why the sudden jump when nothing had improved in the park. The road still had potholes, and the promised upgrades never materialized. One Saturday, while gardening, my neighbor stopped by complaining about another rent increase. I mentioned my $10 hike. She looked confused and told me hers only went up by $5. When I asked how long she'd lived there, she said about 5 years, similar to me. This bothered me. Later that week, I asked another neighbor about their increase. They confirmed it was just $5, same as always. An elderly resident who'd been there over a decade told me they'd never raised the rent more than $5 per year. I felt singled out. I tried contacting the on-site manager who lived 2 houses down, but they never returned my calls, emails, or responded to the note I left. It wasn't about the money, it was the principle. Why was I being charged more? Was it because I always paid up front? Were they taking advantage of me? A co-worker mentioned another mobile home park where you could buy the land with only a $200 yearly HOA fee. I checked it out and found it nicer, with paved roads and well-maintained common areas. I calculated that even with moving costs, I'd break even within 2 years. I bought a lot and arranged the move without telling my current management until 2 weeks before leaving. When I submitted my notice, the manager suddenly had time for me. They asked what they could do to make me stay. I explained about the discrepancy, and they claimed it was a mistake they could fix. I told them it was too late. They stammered about how valued I was as a tenant, especially since I always paid up front. This confirmed my suspicions. They saw me as an easy mark. 2 months later, my home was moved to its new location. The process went smoothly, and I was settled within a week. Out of curiosity, I checked Google satellite images of my old lot a year later. It was still empty and remains vacant to this day. Those idiots lost a reliable tenant all because they got greedy over an extra $5 a month. Now they've lost years of income while I'm building equity in my property with lower costs.